Hello and welcome to the Sins Review. I'm your host, Jackie Sins. So, I'm a huge fan of horror, and that definitely includes zombies.
Resident Evil, Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, iZombie, Train to Busan, The Walking Dead, which unfortunately took a turn for the worst by season 5, and World War Z, just to name a few.
As a reviewer of movies, I'm always on the lookout for movies that I haven't seen yet to check them out and give my thoughts about them on this show, even if it might kill me. So let's talk about 28 Days Later.
28 Days Later was released in 2003 and directed by Danny Boyle. So plenty much our main cast of characters include Jim, played by Cillian Murphy, Selena, played by Naomi Harris, Hannah, played by Megan Burns, and Hannah's father, Frank, played by Brendan Gleeson.
Prior to actually watching this movie myself, I heard a lot of positive feedback about it. And apparently, back when it was released, it was something revolutionary in terms of storytelling and, characters and, stuff like that. So let's see how everything turned out.
The movie starts out with a bunch of animal rights activists breaking into a lab with chimpanzees in cages. The scientist there tries to warn them about the chimps being infected with the rage virus, but the dumbasses don't listen.
I mean, isn't that how shit always falls apart in these things? Stupid ass people doing stupid ass shit and rushing to conclusions. I mean, you could probably tell what happens to them after they set the chimps free. Well, the next thing we know is our first main character, Jim, wakes up in a hospital bed naked. So I guess you could say it's safe to assume that it's been 28 days since the initial outbreak of the virus. And eventually, Jim finds some food to eat and some clothes and heads out. The setup here kind of looks like, it was used as inspiration for The Walking Dead, where Rick, he wakes up in the hospital bed and, you know, ends up wandering the post zombie apocalyptic streets of his hometown. I mean, I could be wrong. I don't know too much about The Walking Dead aside from the show on AMC, but I digress. Oh, did I mention that this takes place in England? Yeah, it's an English zombie film. So while Jim is wandering the abandoned streets of London, there's a very uneasy feeling of dread and isolation.
This can be even scarier than zombies coming out every which way. There is a foreboding atmosphere with Jim completely alone and not knowing what the hell is going on.
Of course, I've talked about atmosphere several times before. It's very common in gothic horror and can at times be much scarier than, I don't know, a monster or ghost jumping out at you. Even though a lot of these types of films tend to have a lot of blood and gore, just simply having the gore and, without any context or a build up to something ominous, I mean, it's just not effective at all. It's just generic shock factor.
Eventually, Jim does encounter a zombie and then some. He is then saved by Selena and a guy named Mark.
Once they all get to someplace safe, Selena and Mark explain the situation to Jim.
People can mainly be infected by being bitten, which is classic zombie logic, or infected blood entering their bodies, like in their eyes, mouth, or nose. The change from human to zombie is almost instantaneous.
Something that Netflix series All of Us Are Dead could have learned from.
Our band of survivors eventually meet Frank and Hannah. Frank saves them from a pursuing zombie.
Of course, there are some details that I want to leave out here because I really don't want to spoil anything important. So, my thoughts on this movie is it's okay. The characters are okay, the story is okay, the acting is okay-ish. In my opinion, it's a fairly unremarkable zombie film. Now, before you eviscerate me in the comments, I am not saying that this movie doesn't have any merit.
It certainly represents a believable situation of civilization crumbling to an outbreak like this. It is easy to care about the characters because they seem like decent enough folk.
I've read a lot of stories and watched a lot of movies and TV shows and played a lot of video games set in a post apocalyptic world involving like zombies or some kind of virus infection or mutations and just the storytelling. Like, for example, The Last of Us, I absolutely love that game. I think the storytelling and the characters are just absolutely phenomenal. And I don't know, maybe, that kind of spoiled me out of what 28 Days Later could have offered me. I guess I recommend seeing this film at least once because, like I said, in my opinion, it's not bad.
I will say, while this film is still decent, it lacks something that left me hungry for more.
I give 28 Days Later Sin. This has been the Sins Review. I'm Jackie Sins.
Hello? Hello?